think for me, that really just represents 1,000 people's worth of work going into it, producing a fantastic update that moved us forward.
Did we realise during winter testing that the car was going to be a handful, or was it when we got to the first race that we thought, oh crumbs? I'm not sure that's exactly what we said, but to be honest, the signs were there from the very, very early running. Even on the filming day that we did at Silverstone, it was obvious that you get this mechanism in the cars. We then went for 3 days in Barcelona, and the car was not that competitive, but we were expecting a big update that we were going to bring to Bahrain, and that was the point that we realised we had a serious issue at that Bahrain test, where we put the update kit on, and it simply didn't make the car go quicker. Now, it's been an interesting year from there on, but there's been a lot of work to do to try and get on top of those problems.
How did the team manage to keep the spirit and the fight going after the first few races? There were definitely moments that were difficult, certainly for me personally, and I think for the team. The main thing is this: if you separate it into two different items, the first is how we actually perform with the car we've got. And I think we did a fairly good job of that all the way through towards the end of the year. We were certainly picking up points that were given to us or rewarded to us by Ferrari or other teams when we could, and we're able to stay fairly close to that second place in the Constructors' Championship. The second is the learning that we could build on throughout the race. So every single race that we have obviously provides you a learning opportunity. And I think we did a very good job throughout the year again of understanding where our weaknesses were and how to build on that towards the end of the year. And the proof of the pudding really is the cars that were fighting for P10, P8, or perhaps even out in Q2, Q1, at the end of the year were able to fight for race wins. And that's really an example as to the culture that we have here. I think everyone knows this externally, but as an example of that, failure is not just always an option, but it's actually something that's almost rewarded. It makes us stronger as a result of it, as long as you can deal with it in the right way. We have a number of values here, as do most companies, but really the most important things of it is innovation, is excellence, but it's how we stick together as a team, how we fight together, and how we come back stronger as a result of it.
Why did the W13 have strong performance on tracks at high altitude? Well, it's fair to say we were very good in Brazil, and we were pretty strong in Mexico. Now, some of that is how the car was working. We were also good actually at the high downforce tracks, and Mexico is a maximum downforce track. So that was one part of it. But the other thing, looking at our analysis of our competitors, we think Ferrari actually dropped back a little bit there. We were able to move forward, and it's always just small things that are shifting your performance one way or other. So there's no single answer, but it's a combination of those factors. Are we fully aware of all the flaws of the W13, and are we able to address those for the W14 car? Well, it's fair to say that by the time you've got to the end of the season, you've raced across a whole range of circuits, you should have pretty much understood all the issues. And certainly by the end of the year, whilst we still had some problems with the car that were making us less competitive at some tracks, those were not new problems. Those were problems that we could anticipate and that have been there for quite a while. Now, the big body of work that's been going on for the last number of months has been to make sure that those issues on the 13 don't get carried into the 14. And we've made good progress there. Now, you can see that in some of the later updates, particularly the update that we brought to Austin, just put us that bit closer to the front. So a lot of our focus was making sure we can develop an update kit, bring it to the track, and actually see it translate to performance. And hopefully the culmination of that work will mean that we can get an altogether more competitive package together for next year.
How would you rate George's performance this year, both in and out of the car? I think on the whole, it doesn't really take us to tell you this, but George did a very good job this year. He is against the best in the world, and that's your reference. And what is very clear is that at the beginning of the year, when we had a car that was difficult, Lewis was using his wealth of experience to help us in order to improve the car and to really move us forwards as a part of the team. George, in that period of time, was just really focused on learning, bettering himself into the team, and he scored a number of results, really, that benefited him as a result of that. irrespective, his qualifying pace, I think, is within zero of where Lewis ended up. His race pace was very, very strong throughout the year. And that's really what we're looking for. How does he fit into our environment? How does he fit into the team? How does he work with Lewis? How does he work with everyone else? And I think in all of those, he did an incredibly good job. It was a big step up for him from Williams. I think where Williams operates is obviously very high level. Where we operate is a little bit different to that. But I think he adapted very quickly and very well. Did you develop a passion for any new food during your travels? There was, I'll speak for myself, I'm sure Shov will deliver from his side, but bits that I found, for example, Singapore is always tricky. It's a night race and we're eating at around about 1 to 3 a.m. and there aren't many places open at that time of night, but I found a particularly good Thai place which expanded my palate. Otherwise, I had a few curries, not many, with Shov and the other engineers, which definitely changed my palate for, I think, good or bad. I'm not sure yet. So a few experiments anyway this year.
From my side, well, there were a lot less curries, and what we'd realised, perhaps in previous years, the more curry we had, the more we won. Maybe that was actually largely down to the car and not what we were having for dinner on an evening. So we tried and tried in the early part of the year. It simply wasn't bringing the race wins. So we backed off on that. And then the other big development for me was I did actually have sushi for dinner, which I swore I'd never have it. It's a snack, it's not a meal. But in Brazil on the Saturday night, I did have sushi for dinner. So maybe there's something in that going forward. Which race was the pivotal point for the development of the W13 and our understanding for next year? Well, probably the one that will stick in the minds of the engineers is Barcelona. And Barcelona was the one where we made the biggest step in getting on top of the aero bouncing phenomenon. We were able to have pretty good performance, but also it allowed us to see that once we'd solved that issue, there were still other issues to solve with the ride of the car. It wasn't very good over the bumps, and it gave us the clarity to work on those next steps. So whilst it was only a small step in the right direction, from a learning point of view, it was a really important update.
So can we call you Andrew?
I do respond to it, but honestly, I prefer Shov, and that's what everyone here calls me normally, so yeah, let's stick with Shov. So, can we call you Andrew?
I'd really prefer not. I think it'll get very confusing very quickly.
So apart from Brazil, which race made us most proud? For me, it was probably Austria, to be honest. We'd crashed both cars in qualifying. It was a sprint race. We didn't have any spares of the floors, and there was a massive amount of work that went on in the garage to try and get those cars ready to race the next day. They were in pretty poor shape, and we were actually making sections of the floor and having to bond it on. But a brilliant job by all the mechanics to get those ready and back out on the track the next day.
I think my race would probably be Austin. We brought a significant update, and it was the culmination of many, many months of work before then. And as we discussed before, the learning is probably the most important thing that we've done this year. And that update really cemented it all together, brought it all together. And whilst in Austin itself, we perhaps weren't on the leading edge, that is what led to the Brazil win. It also led towards the strong performance we had in Mexico. And from there, we can build on to next year. So I think for me, that really just represents 1,000 people's worth of work going into it, producing a fantastic update that moved us forward.
How is the team feeling going into 2023? Well, it's a funny time of year because you don't know what kind of work your competitors are doing, how well they're progressing. But we've been very focused on the learning side, trying to iron out those issues that we've had with the W13 car, just trying to put performance on it as well. There's a lot of that work going on. And we're looking forward to the new season. Now, after the year that we've had, we're never going to go into it saying that we think we'll be fighting back at the front. But we are very, very determined to get back to getting the car on pole position, to winning races. And we're always excited when developing and launching a new car. It's a good time of year. So lots of work, lots of interest, lots of excitement, but it's going to be tough and we're ready for a fight.
I think just looking around the factory, you can just see everyone is incredibly motivated by what happened last year, and more importantly, by wanting to get back onto that top step and consistently showing the world and other teams that we know how to win. We want to be back there, and we have an opportunity to get back there across the winter. You never know what's going to happen. You have a number of teams that are fiercely doing what we're doing, which is every single day scraping for a millisecond or more. But the reality is that we're in a strong position here in terms of the learning that we can build on from last year. And everything I see around is just everyone wanting to win and doing everything they can across the winter to do so.
So thank you very much for all of your questions over the whole season. It's been great the way that the fans have followed the team through this difficult year. We are hoping that 2023 will be much stronger, and we'll look forward to talking to you then.
What he said.